Hello everybody, good evening, and I need to do that. And I completely forgot to turn my speakers off. I'm such a pro. But there we go. Can I start again? I think maybe I should. Good evening everybody. Yeah, as usual, I have totally nailed my intro. But there it is. I don't know. I can't seem to do any better than that these days. So I do apologize. So who have we got here? Just Bob is the first one in. He says, good evening, everybody. Rainer's here. Bobby Booth, as ever, is ever present, as usual. H2K Music Labs, not really sure if I've seen you before, but if you're new to my show, welcome. You are very welcome. Kyle Jedruziak is here. Good to see you, buddy. And Ken Moss, Kelly Winters, absolutely the top guys and girls, and everybody else is in here. Jeff McCartney's just arrived, and Just Bob says, watching on my new computer, that I can't thank Johnny Guyver enough for his help. Awesome. Yeah, you were saying that in the HST group that you had a new computer and Johnny got you up and running, which is very cool. He is exceedingly good at that kind of thing. So, you know, if any of you are having an issue with your computer and running Studio One on it, he's fantastic at getting you going. He's helped me out, I don't know how many times when I've had issues with computers or anything really. Like he's helped me get set up with Camtasia for making my videos, and also OBS for doing this. Johnny's been instrumental, very, very much instrumental in helping me take my business forward and progress. So we all owe him an enormous, massive, huge, gigantic thank you for all that he does for all of us, really. So let's see. I don't even know how many people we have in the room because I'm not paying any attention to over here. I should be. Now we've got 14 people by the look of it, which is cool. If you are here and you have not said hello in the chat, please do. I would appreciate it. And oh, for some reason my stream has frozen and I have the spinny wheel. I hope nobody else has the spinny wheel, the spinning wheel of doom. Hopefully you guys don't have that. I hope not. Okay, all seems to be well. I just needed to refresh the screen. There we go. Okay, my little laptop is rubbish. I have a little laptop that has a, what does it say here? It's an AMD dual-core CPU. It has a 1 gigahertz processor. So it's a bit rubbish, really, with 4 gigs of RAM. And the RAM so easily maxes out. Cal says, what goes up must come down. Yes, absolutely. That is frequently the case in a wide range of scenarios. Just Bob says, please hit the like button, folks. It helps JL standing on YouTube. Yep, it certainly does. Ken says, spinning wheel for a few seconds during the intro. Yeah, I think for whatever reason, YouTube is like a Nissan Micra pulling away from traffic lights. It takes a few seconds to get up to speed before it's actually moving at the same speed as everybody else in the traffic. So I think that's definitely the case there. As you can tell, I have a horrendous cough and an extremely sore throat, which is no fun because I've been singing all day today. I've been rehearsing with our church choir since this morning, since about 9 o'clock this morning until about 4 o'clock this afternoon. So I've been singing mostly high tenor parts and occasionally singing alto because the choir is short on altos this year. So I've been singing some of the alto parts to help out them because they are low on numbers. I think there's only 3 of them and there should be 7. So I've been switching between tenor and alto because I have a very wide vocal range, so I can do that quite easily. But it is quite hard to sustain singing those high notes for an extended period of time, and it doesn't help when you have a throat that hurts like hell. But you see, I generally speaking just don't tell anybody that it hurts like hell, because they'll just basically say, okay, well, we'll sit this one out this year, and I just don't want to do that. It's Christmas, and it's our carol concert, and I love doing our carol concert. Our church, every year we make a video for Christmas. One of our members writes a new poem every year for Christmas, and she wrote an absolute beauty of a poem. And another friend of mine who's a film composer, a guy called Stu Kennedy, he wrote the music for it, and I recorded and mixed all the dialogue, because we had quite a lot of dialogue this year. We had the poem translated into 12 different languages, so we had a lot of different people read in their language for that, for the poem, and it worked really well. I did a lot of really creative sound design stuff for that, and it's great fun to do. So let's see, Lollipop Guild is here already. He says, hello, peeps. Jeff says he got the spinner as well. Yeah, well, hopefully you're not getting it now. I'm looking at my stream health. Let's see, where are we at? Just under 1200 kilobits a second. And how many drop frames? Do we have any? No, we don't. We don't have any drop frames, so we should be good now. The piece of music that you heard at the intro there was a piece I wrote for the very first Songwriting Simplified show that Jonny and I did way back in the mists of time. I think that was about 3 years ago. I can't remember. Must be 3 years ago. Something like that anyway. And that was our original theme tune, of which we maybe used the first sort of 25 seconds or so. And so I thought, you know what? I've not played this in such a long time. I've not heard it in such a long time. So I thought, why not? Let's dig it out and let you guys hear the whole thing. So I hope you enjoyed that. And Carl says, been good so far. Well, that's good. And Jeff says, I'm good now. That's even better. Okay. So we're all good. So Christmas is upon us. Well, nearly upon us. We're into December 2nd. December 3rd for me, because it's now 9 minutes past midnight. So I've just clicked over into December 3rd. So it's Monday morning here. So has anyone started their Christmas shopping yet? I haven't. And if you have, what is on your Christmas wish list for stuff for your studio? So that could be plugins, it could be outboard gear, keyboards, whatever. What's on your wish list that you hope that somebody might get for you for your Christmas this year? Or if you're kind of one of those people that kind of just ask for money for Christmas, and you get a huge sort of like, well, not necessarily huge, but maybe you get a nice little bundle of money from several sources over Christmas, and then you go spend that on something audio related for your studio. Please put in the chat whatever that might be. It'd be quite cool to see what people are thinking about here. Bobby says, I had to go down to 144, but that's due to my lousy internet. Well, that's a shame. I'm sorry about that, because that would mean the quality would be pretty horrible. Carl says, just a few cards left. Well, good for you. Buster is here. Hey, Buster, good to see you. He says, do you have contemporary praise and worship in your church? Yes, we do. We are, we're not a denominational church, if you know what that means. So we're not Baptist, we're not Methodist, we're not Pentecostal, we're not anything like that. We are, my church is part of a family of churches called New Ground, which is part of a wider network of churches called New Frontiers. And I've been involved with the New Frontiers movement since 1994. So yeah, long time now. And so, yes, we do have contemporary music. We have a worship band, and which we occasionally augment with a horn section and a string section, and sometimes even a brass band. It depends. And one of our elders, a guy called Chris, is a very talented arranger, and he does quite a lot of the arrangements, and sometimes I help out, which is cool. If I have time to be able to devote to helping him out with arrangements for Easter or Christmas, then I write some arrangements as well. So that's what we do. Ken Moss says, asking for dollars to get Presonus Symphony Orchestra and possibly the Atom. I can tell you that the Presonus Symphonic Orchestra is really, really good. It's not... Okay, here's the thing. It's, for the price point of the Presonus Symphonic Orchestra, it is outstanding. In its bracket, if you like, in its price bracket, I don't think there's anything that compares with it. You could say that it sounds more expensive than it actually is. But that said, I would not necessarily put it alongside the Vienna Symphonic Orchestra sound library, or the East-West Strings, or, you know, some of the bigger, more expensive, like the LA Scoring Orchestra library. The LA Scoring Orchestra is, I think that's about $700, $800, I think. Well, the Presonus Symphonic Orchestra is about $100, so it's a lot lower in price. And so therefore there are, of course, budgetary constraints when you're creating a product in that kind at that kind of price point. So but that said, it does give you a lot. It gives you a full orchestra, strings, brass, woodwinds and percussion, and you get a whole range of articulations for each of the instruments within each of those sections. You do get some some more unusual instruments as well, like you get alto flutes, you get double bassoon, you get bass clarinets. So there's a few that are unusual there, which are great, by the way. The alto flutes sound absolutely gorgeous. I've used those fairly recently for a film score for a student film, which is like a little 8-minute film. And he asked me if I would be so kind as to score it for him on a shoestring budget. So I said, yes, that's fine. I will exchange a score for your 8-minute film for a box of beer. And he said, that's fine. So I was happy to do that for him because he's a student, so he doesn't have a whole lot of money. But he's a great filmmaker. He's really, really talented, and I want to be able to encourage and support his talent and his skill set. And if I can get him in, if I can be a part of helping him to get into the movie business in a much bigger way and perhaps even professionally, then, you know, if I can help out with that, then I will. So I consider this kind of helping him out and supporting him. So and I used the PSO almost exclusively. I played some extra bits here in the studio here. I played some fretless bass. I played some piano. I played a little bit of my own clarinet as well. There's a couple of clarinet solo sections or features. So I got my clarinet out and dusted it off and played those myself because I wanted I wanted to be able to do things on the clarinets that there are no articulations in the Presonus Symphonic Orchestra for. So things like slides, glissandos, those kind of things, and pitch bends, which you do with your embouchure. There are no articulations for that. And using the modulation wheel or the pitch bend wheel on my keyboard doesn't really have the same effect, so it's not nearly as good. So I thought, hey, I'll have to dust out my own clarinet to do that. So I did that, and it was great fun working on that. Buster says, I've been trying to use the chord track with the PSO, but it isn't working too good. I used the main WAV file to extract the chord track, and the other tracks don't follow well. Yeah, you have to set them right in the inspector. Buster says, using the Presonus PSO loops, by the way. Okay, yeah. My friend Lucas, who is a beta tester for Studio One, as am I, he has done a really fantastic little series of videos. I've done a series of videos on the PSO. He has done them with the chord track in mind. So go and look out his videos. I believe they are on the PreSonus YouTube channel. I think they are, anyway. Certainly you may well find links to them in the PreSonus blog as well on their website. Because he was asked by PreSonus to do that series, which is very cool. He is an extremely gifted guy, by the way. He's a great piano player and arranger in his own right. And so he did his series of PSO videos with the chord track in mind, and they're really, really good. So they're well worth checking out, because my series doesn't cover the Studio One version 4. It only covers Studio One 3. I maybe need to update it. Lucas, I've forgotten his last name. But yeah, go on to the PreSonus YouTube channel, and I think they are all there. If not, I will find them. I'll hunt them down, Buster, and I will maybe put a post in the community section of my YouTube channel. If you're a subscriber to my channel, there's a new community feature, which means I can write a post, kind of like you do on Facebook. So I can write a post and I can put links in there. So I'll put a link to it in the community section. So watch out for that post, and then you should be able to follow that. And it'll take you to his videos. So I hope that helps you, Buster. So go check that out. So what else are folk looking for Christmas? And by the way, I have my Christmas mug, and it is filled with hot chocolate right now. Rather than my usual cup of tea, which is what you normally see me with, my Fender mug with my cup of tea. But tonight I'm having my Christmas Santa's Little Helper mug, which my wife bought for me about 4 years ago, with hot chocolate, which is now, yeah, slightly mild chocolate. So yeah, so what else are folk interested in getting for Christmas for their studios? I'd really be interested to know, actually. So we talked a bit about the PreSonus Symphonic Orchestra and the value of that. So and we can expand upon that if you got. Oh, steady on, Johnny. I'm happy to expand upon that if. Yeah, I'm happy to expand upon that if you wish. Buster says there seems to be no info on the different algorithms in selecting to follow in the chord track, just to experiment. My good friend Marcus Huskins has done a superb, and I really do mean superb, series on chord track, and which one of the following parameters to use and when. Marcus is another beta tester, and he spent a lot of time on chord track. I spent quite a bit of time on chord track as well, but my focus was not on, you know, all of the following stuff. Mine was to do with I spent a lot of time working on detecting the chords and detecting the voicings and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what I was playing with, and he was playing with the following modes and that kind of stuff. So his series on chord track is really, really good. I've kind of done an overview of chord track and how useful it is as a little songwriting or arranging tool. You know, if you want to reharmonize a song, or let's say you've written a song and you want your last verse to be reharmonized in some way, but with the same melody, then chord track is extremely useful for those kind of things. But yeah, Marcus has got a great video on those, so go and check that out. Marcus Huskins. Buster says, I'd like to find a good contemporary Christian singer for original music. Would that be a Christmas gift? Yeah, maybe. Kyle has to run. Okay, Kyle. Kyle, really good to have you in the show, as usual, my friend. Take care. And I don't know if you guys have got any snow in your neighborhood, but I know that my sister, who's in the Grays Lake area, kind of outside of Chicago, they have an absolute ton of snow on the ground. So if you are traveling anywhere and there is snow on the ground, please do go carefully, is what I would say. Bobby Beer says, need someone to get my Waves plugins to work. Are you using Waves 10? If you're using Waves 10, there is currently an outstanding issue with Waves 10 and certain DAWs. Studio One is included. I believe Logic has the same problem or a similar problem. So I would reach out to Waves and see if they can help you. And maybe also put in a support ticket with Presonus, but I think Presonus are going to tell you, hey, this is a Waves issue, because, oh, that's my phone. Okay, I should have turned the sound off on this. Let's do that now. There we go. Yeah, so I would say, Bobby, that you need to maybe just reach out to Waves and see what they can do for you. And hopefully they will, I'm pretty sure that they know about this issue, and therefore I'm pretty sure that they are working on it currently. I am not a Waves beta tester, so I can't tell you anything, and even if I was a beta tester, I probably couldn't tell you anyway, because I'd be under NDA, but I would be pretty sure that they're working on this. Just Bob says, Grays Lake, that's 5 miles south of me. All the snow is melted. Tons of rain. Oh, really? Okay. Okay, that's interesting, because my sister sent me some pictures of the amount of snow that they had on the ground, and I know Jonny did a video, a little sort of Facebook Live thing a few days ago, showing just how much snow they had. Bobby says, I have contacted Waves already, just waiting on them now. Well, hopefully they'll get back to you fairly soon, because I know that this is actually a relatively major issue with Waves 10, and it doesn't play nice with certain DAWs. I don't know why that is. I've not upgraded my Waves bundles to Waves 10, and I'm glad I didn't now. I didn't, not because I knew that there was an issue, but I didn't do it just simply because I forgot. Really, nothing special. I just forgot to do it. So I know that Waves 9 works absolutely perfectly with Studio One 4. My Waves plugins are showing up just fine, and they were all working just fine as well. My Slate are working just fine. I don't have a whole bunch of Waves plugins. I only have like the NS1, the SSL channel strips, and the J37 tape machine. And that's pretty much all I've got. I used to have loads of Waves plugins way back in the late 90s. When I was a Cubase guy, I had the Waves Gold bundle. I think it was called the Gold bundle at the time. I can't quite remember. So I had like I think it was like a £600-700 bundle, and I think it was called Waves Gold. I'm pretty sure it was. And I had that bundle, and then of course I was challenged to mix a song with just the native Cubase plugins, which I did. And then this friend of mine said, okay, that's great, you've proved your point, but how about you do that for a whole year with all your client work, and you just mix with native Cubase plugins for a year. So I did, and then I just kind of carried on. I just carried on doing that. I didn't stop. And then in 2013 I switched to Studio One, and I didn't really think to reinstall my Waves bundles. When I upgraded successive versions of Cubase, Cubase SX1 to Cubase SX2, and then, and so forth, I really didn't think to reinstall my Waves plugin bundle. I just didn't. And so I swapped out computers at the same time as switching to Studio One. I got a new computer, and it just didn't really occur to me, hey, I should maybe go and get that bundle. So I never did. I never went back to it, and I think I even went so far back at some point early 2000s to just completely uninstall it, and de-authenticate the licenses. I think that's what I did. So even if I was to try and reinstall it, I probably couldn't now because I don't think the licenses are valid anymore. So yeah, and it wasn't really until 2 years ago that I started getting Waves plugins again, when they were on special deals, and so it was a long fast, an unintentionally long third-party plugin fast, and so yeah, so I don't use very much third-party plugins. I have the Slate Everything bundle and a few select Wave plugins, and that's it. Let's see. Yeah, Bobby says maybe I need to go back to version 9. Yeah, maybe you do. Kelly asks, is your ceiling treated in any way? Then again, do you do much open mic type tracking? I track vocals in here, and I do acoustic guitars and some percussion stuff. No, my roof is not treated, because this is rented property, so I couldn't. Pretty much, I would get into an awful lot of trouble if I stuck up anything on the ceiling. I had to ask very, very nicely to put the panels up on the walls. And they were just like, yeah, go ahead, that's fine, not a problem. So I've hung them in such a way that when we take them down, it's not going to leave any marks on the wall. So they're happy with that, and we would just paint over them anyway. Mike is here. Good to see Mike. He says, I'm late. I was playing around Studio One. That's all right, mate. No problem. Buster says, off topic. As a musician, do you listen to praise and worship music differently? That subpar execution is distracting, both from the booth and also from the performers. As far as I'm concerned, good music is good music. Whatever the style or the genre, whether it's Christian or not. If it's good, then I will applaud it heartily, and I will promote it, and I will encourage it. Yes, there is some very bad Christian music out there, but there's also some very, very bad pop music out there too. So if I come across bad music of any kind, I can't listen to it. And that includes bad mixing. And there are a lot of bad mixes out there that are done for professional records, commercially released records, and you're just thinking, gosh, that mix is so out of balance. There are a few out there, or crikey, those drums are horrendously overcompressed to the point where there's just no life to them. What was the mix engineer thinking? There's a few of those out there. But that said, there are also some really good Christian artists out there that work very hard at their craft. You know, they don't just go, hey, I'm just here to make a joyful noise to God. No. You know, that's a lame excuse for poor quality, to be honest. But for a lot of people, no, they work incredibly hard. You know, one of my friends, a very close friend of mine called Sarah Benton, she's a fantastic singer, songwriter. She's got a fantastic voice, and she works incredibly hard at what she does, whether it's in the secular music business or in the Christian music industry, and she works just as hard at either. And I think if you can do that, whatever music side of the music business you're in, then you know you get my encouragement, frankly. Wow, you guys are very active tonight, which is cool. I like active chat. H2K Music Lab says, a more comfortable office chair for the hours of sitting and mixing. The Alesis Harmony keyboard, Presonus Interface 6.8. Those are all good choices, actually. This chair that I'm sitting on, I got from IKEA for under £100. So, and it is actually remarkably comfortable. Alesis Harmony keyboard, I don't think I've ever heard of that one. The 6.8 interface is fantastic. It's a great little device, and one of the best little features of that 6.8 interface is that it has loopback feature. So if you want to do screen capture videos, most of the time you have to use two interfaces, because Studio One will completely take over one interface, which means your screen capture is not going to capture the audio of Studio One. It just isn't. So you need two interfaces so that you can send outputs from your main interface that Studio One is using to another interface that the screen capture software can listen to. That's generally the way on a Windows machine you have to do it. In a Mac, you can do what they call aggregation. You can create aggregate devices, and that way you're not having to use more than one interface, because you're creating a virtual interface that ScreenFlow or whatever the screen capture software is listening to that. But the routing is pretty much identical. It's just virtual routing instead of actual hardware cable routing, which is what I have here. Now, the 6.8 has a loopback feature, which means you only need one interface. You can have your screen capture software listen to the same interface that Studio One is listening to, which is very, very cool. It's one of the few, I think, PreSonus devices that can do that. So definitely, I heartily commend that as an idea. Buster says, people seem more concerned with plugins and magic answers versus capturing good recorded takes. Plugins should be the icing on the cake. Well, that kind of depends on what the plugins are for. If the plugins are for EQ and compression are your bread and butter tools for mixing. Pretty much you're always going to need an EQ, you're always going to need a compressor, by and largely. That said, you can do EQ and compression with mic placement, mic choice, mic positioning, particularly if you're recording a band live. I was watching a really, really, really good video the other day made by the magazine Sound on Sound, and they went into this studio which is in London, down in England, and it's a 1950s studio, and it basically has 1950s microphones, 1950s control room gear, including mixers, compressors and EQs and all of that, and it's all genuine, authentic 1950s gear. Now here's the thing, when they have a band in there, they often record live with minimal miking, so they will record a whole band live with one mic. And so how do you get the balance, you might be asking, between the different instruments? Well, it's about where you position that mic and where you position the musicians relative to that microphone. So if you're using, let's say, an RCA Victor ribbon mic, for example, which is a 1950s microphone from like the early 1950s, it has a figure of 8 pickup pattern, which means it picks up from both the positive and negative side of the microphone. And of course the sides are dead, so there's no address to the microphone from the sides, which means you can capture the lead vocal from the positive side, you can capture the bass from the negative side of the microphone, and then if you've got another mic for the drums, you can position the drums in the dead spot of the mic that's capturing the guitar, the bass, and the vocals, and then have your other mic that is capturing just the drums positioned in such a way that everything else is in that microphone's dead spot. And by doing that, you get fantastic separation between all of the instruments, and you're getting your levels and your balance and your EQ from where you position the microphones and where you've actually positioned the musicians relative to the microphones. And you can legitimately record a whole 4 or 5 piece band with 2 microphones and get just as good separation as you would from modern multi-miking techniques. So you're absolutely right. Capturing the recordings to the highest quality and the highest level, and capturing fantastic performances, really, really high level performances, is everything. Invest the majority of your time in the music production process in the recording phase, and your mixes will thank you, because when you come to mixing, it will be a breeze. You may even not need to use an EQ. You may not even need to use a compressor, or you might only need to do minimal EQ and minimal compression. And that will make the whole mastering process a doddle, because really all you'll be doing is just a little bit of limiting and maybe a little bit of stereo widening, possibly, maybe not, because you have to think about what the stereo widening is going to do to the sides of the EQ, and is it going to bring up background noise in the sides or mic bleed in the sides of the mix that you don't want. So you have to think about those. But getting it right at the source, as my good friend Joe Gilder will tell you, is where it's at. So you're quite correct there, Buster. I totally agree. Let's see. Okay, let's scroll back down the chat. Any more questions? Bobby says both my SSL EQ E and G channels don't work, but I'm not too worried about that because I got them through Plugin Alliance when they came out. Okay, cool. Ken says some have gotten better, but still having issues with a handful of plugins. Let's see. Kelly says, what happens to the bleed over in that case? Are you talking about what happens to bleed over when you are when you're positive and negative addressing of a ribbon mic that has the figure 8 of 8 pattern? Well, you get some separation, and if you put instruments in dead spots to those relative to those mics, then you're not going to get so much bleed. You'll get some because, you know, naturally you've got microphones in a room and you've got multiple instruments in a room. You're going to get some because you're going to get some reflections. But what they tended to do in the 1950s and early 1960s was when they recorded live like that, and certainly this is the case with the early Beatles records, they did a lot with baffling. So they would put up panels like gobos to eliminate some of the bleed, like from drums, so that Ringo's drums didn't get into Paul's vocal mic or what have you. So it's all about the mic placement, and a little bit of baffling will go a long way to being able to make a good, clean live record. I mean, they would in the 50s they would record a whole record in a day, you know, 7-8 songs in a day, and mix them, and it'd be ready for mastering the next day. You know, that's how quick the turnaround was then. But nowadays, with multi-micing everything, the mixing phase takes that a little bit longer than it would have done then, because you would mix it live to tape back then. Whereas now we don't do that because we've got plugins and because you have a DAW. So we don't need to do that so much. But so our turnaround now is a little bit longer. For example, I'm mixing an album at the moment with my client in Hong Kong. I'm doing his record, and it's a 10-song record, and it takes me, I mean, they're not huge track counts. There may be, I think the biggest track count is one song has 31 tracks, but all the others are kind of like below 20. So, you know, it doesn't take me too terribly long to get through those. But some of the recordings, some are great, some not quite so great, but they're still very good. So I still have to do a little bit of surgical work. So the mix process of each song is going to take me 2, maybe 3 hours on each song. Whereas, you know, back in the 50s, you would be mixing you'd be getting all of the levels and some of the relative EQ done whilst you're setting up the microphones. Ready to, you know, before you've even hit the record button, you've got all the balances set and you've got instruments panned and that kind of stuff. You've got all of that done. And so you're kind of EQing and compressing on the fly. You hit the record button, off you go, and it just goes straight down to tape. The mix is done by the end of the song. So, have we moved much further now that we've got all this incredible DAW technology? Have we actually improved and sped up how quickly you can produce a song? I think it's kind of marginally debatable, to be honest. You know, nowadays we'll have, you know, a rock track might well have 80 to 100 tracks. That's going to take you a while to mix. Because that's 80 individual sounds that have got to be all balanced together, that have got to all find their space in a crowded, you know, frequency spectrum. And you've got to make every one of those 100 sounds detectable, discernible, identifiable to the listener's ear, whilst not one of them dominating the mix, apart from maybe the vocal is allowed to be a little bit more upfront, but nothing dominates the whole mix. So that takes a bit longer to do than it would have done in the 50s with old analog gear. Have we moved on much? Have we improved things? I'm not so sure. That's my take on things. Lollipop says, question, what's your best advice for learning keys? Is there one approach that works better than others, or YouTube tutorials could recommend to follow for an efficient learning process? There are courses on Udemy that you can take for various different styles of piano, depending upon what you want to learn. If you're wanting to learn classical piano, then I recommend that you seek out a local piano teacher. And there's a reason why I say that is because what a YouTube tutorial can teach you, you're going to learn bad habits because you're not going to be paying attention to your technique. Whereas a piano teacher sitting there watching you play is going to be able to correct your technique before it becomes a bad habit. So I heartily recommend seeking out a local piano teacher. Your piano playing will thank you later down the line. I wish I had done that. I didn't. The way I learned piano was from listening to records. I listened to Thelonious Monk play for hours and hours and hours, whilst the rest of my school friends were listening to Adam and the Ants and punk music and that kind of stuff, and U2 and, you know, popular bands from the 1980s and the late 70s. I was listening to Thelonious Monk and Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Parker and John Coltrane and Miles Davis. That's what I listened to. That was my music education primarily. But listening to Thelonious Monk taught me a lot about the piano and what a glorious instrument it is. I fell in love with the piano when I heard him play, and then I fell in love with the piano all over again when I heard Bud Powell play. And then the very first time I went to see Chick Corea in concert at the South Bank in London in 1994, he was doing a solo piano concert. And I fell in love with the piano all over again because Chick Corea is one of the greatest piano players to ever sit down in front of a piano, in my opinion. His style, his grace, his touch at the piano is just a thing of beauty. And I learned a lot just from watching him play and listening to him play. So it depends upon how you learn. Like for me, I learn by listening. I listen to something and I can identify by my ear. I can identify their particular playing style, what their particular playing technique. Like Thelonious Monk, his technique was that a lot of classical piano players would say his piano technique was horrifying to watch, but really, because his technique was a little unconventional, it meant that he was able to accent rhythms and notes in a particular way that no classical player could ever do. However good they are, whether they are a prodigy, a genius classical piano player, they wouldn't have been able to kind of like get the nuances that he was getting out of the piano. And it was all to do with his particular touch and his particular technique, an approach to melody that made the difference. So for me, it's I learn by listening. But does that teach me good piano technique? No, I should have. When I was a kid, I should have sought out piano lessons. I had maybe 2 or 3 piano lessons when I was a kid, and she got annoyed with me because all I wanted to do was watch and listen to her play. And she thought that I was not getting anything out of the piano lessons. I was getting tons out of those piano lessons. I learned so much out of those piano lessons. And she thought I was being lazy. I was watching her play. I was taking everything in. I was paying attention to detail. I learned so much from those 5 or 6 lessons I had with her. She was a wonderful piano player, and she was a jazz piano player. She played piano in big bands in the 1930s and 40s here in the UK, and she was actually quite famous for it. But she would play Mozart piano concertos in our piano lessons, and I just wanted her to play, because that's how I learn. I learn by listening, and I learn by paying attention to detail. Most people don't learn that way. So find your learning style and then seek out a piano teacher that is going to be able to complement that with the way they teach, and you'll be golden. That said, I do Skype lessons. It's true, I do. Kelly says yes, or using minimal number of mics. Absolutely. The fewer mics you have, the less you are going to get phase issues and phase cancellation and stuff like that. Mike says, I'm thinking about doing license syncing for my music. What do you think about this idea? I think it's a great idea. It is hard to get into. There are various companies that you can do sync licensing with. Will you get a whole lot of money out of it? It's very, very hard. You have to submit a whole plethora of music in the hope that your music is going to be featured in NCIS or or any other TV show, or even in just a daytime television show where your music might get used. And you don't get a ton of money for it either, unless you're submitting hundreds of pieces of music. It's very difficult to make a living out of it. But that said, if you're doing it as part of diversifying your revenue stream for your business, then yes, I would advocate it. I would say go do it, because it's another way to get income coming in. And if you're submitting music all the time, then there is the hope that at least a couple of your pieces will get featured, and you'll get a royalty check at the end of it, which is what you want. It might not be a huge royalty check, but the more you do it, and the more the sync licensing companies see your name and hear your music, the more they're going to promote you to the production companies. So I'm not poo-pooing the idea. I think the idea is a very good one. It's just, it's something you have to be very patient with to get into. Even writing music specifically for television and film is incredibly hard to get into. Now, I'm very, very close friends with a film composer. I mentioned his name earlier, Stu Kennedy. Stu Kennedy has worked with David Arnold, who did the Lord of the Rings films, and what else did he do? I can't remember. David Arnold has written music for lots of films, including James Bond films. And my friend Stu does some of the orchestrations for David. It's David's compositions, but Stu will then orchestrate it and orchestrate it for the scoring orchestra, whatever that might be. And his kind of hope, his kind of aim is that eventually he will go from kind of being an assistant to David Arnold to eventually getting a film in his own name, a film score in his own name. So it says music composed and conducted by Stu Kennedy. That would be awesome if he gets that. So, you know, like I say, I know him very, very well, and I've learned a lot from him about writing for film. And so I'm hoping that one day I might be able to get into writing for film and TV, writing TV themes and that kind of thing eventually. And maybe I may at some point down the line, if Stu really does take off and become a fully fledged film composer in his own right, then maybe I might do some orchestrations for him. Who knows? You never know. Just Bob says, Thelonious Monk, all the knowledge but none of the rigid discipline. I actually disagree with that. He was very rigidly disciplined, but just in a different way. That's what I would say. Kelly says, at Just Bob, I thought it was Thelonious. Yes, it is Thelonious. Independence Day. Yeah, that's another great film score. Bobby Booth and Kelly Winter with $2 each. Thank you very much, guys. Really appreciate it. Every dollar counts, especially as we run up into Christmas. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate that. Just Bob says, you're correct. I've listened to him, but my quick Google search for spelling pulled up a comedian. Yeah, Felonious is, yeah. I think it's a pun on Thelonious Monk's name. Alrighty. We've got about 7 or 8 minutes left. I'm prepared to overrun a little bit if you guys have got some burning questions that you really want to get me to answer. I'm happy to do that. If you guys are happy to stick around. So I'm hopeful that you guys are happy to stick around for a bit. So we've got 15 watching. It would be nice if we could have pushed that up towards 20 or 22. You never know. Maybe one day we'll have a lot of people in my show. That would be nice. I hope you guys are not getting the spinny wheel again. Kelly says, I'm still bugged by what seems to be the time signature change on that Pink Floyd song. Yeah, Pink Floyd they used a lot of different time signatures in their songs. They were really quite adventurous, and sometimes they would use straight up metric modulation. Jeff asks, are you happy you bought the Nord piano for your studio? Oh yes, I got this in 2006. And it's an absolute beast of an instrument, and they used physical modeling techniques to generate the sounds. So you know, it really is like playing a real instrument. So the one I have set it on at the moment, this is the Fender Rhodes Mark V, and the cool thing about this. Cool thing about the Fender Rhodes Mark V is that I actually have one of these, and this sounds exactly like it. It really actually does sound like a real Fender Rhodes Mark V. Similarly, if I dial back to this one, this is the Mark II, which again sounds extraordinarily like the Mark II, with the different pickup pattern. With this particular pickup positioning, you really hear the hammers hit the metal tines. Especially in this register. And so I love that, but then again, the Steinway Concert Grand sounds just as lovely. Sounds absolutely gorgeous. I'm not going to play any more of that because I don't want to get struck for copyright particularly. Thank you, Mr. Rogers and Hammerstein for that song. It's absolutely gorgeous. Again, the Hammond organ. The Hammond organ is just gorgeous. It's just fantastic. Sounds just like a real Hammond to me, having played a Hammond. Lollipop says, oh my, I could listen to you play for hours. Well, that's very kind of you. What amp is it coming out of? It isn't. It's coming direct into my audio box USB and then straight into the PreSonus monitor station, then straight back out of that into my second interface and out to you guys, because OBS is listening to my second interface. So there you go. So yeah, it does sound absolutely fantastic. It's a beautiful instrument, and it cost me £2,100 in 2006. Now, since I got this is the original Norge Stage 88 Revision B. They've since come out with, I think just recently they launched the Stage 4. That's how far behind we are. It was, I mean, yeah, okay. It was like 12, 13 years ago, but the Stage 4, I've played one. I went to go and see it launched in Glasgow when they did the part of the launch tour. Nord Clavier came to Glasgow, so I went to Glasgow to go and check it out, and it's just like my jaw hit the floor. The quality of the physical modeling is just, it makes this sound crap. It really does, and this sounds amazing. So imagine what the the Stage 4 sounds like. Good grief, it's unbelievable. It really is. I mean, the cool thing about this is it's got the Hammond organ. It's also got a Vox Farcifer from 1960 something. What else has it got? It's also got a Dio as well, a Argavox organ, which just sounds amazing. Which is a classic 1960s organ that appears on a few Beach Boys records, and I even think a couple of Beatles records as well. Pink Floyd used one in the early 70s on a couple of songs. Yeah, and so it's got those organs in here as well. Plus you got the Steinway Concert Grand. You've also got the Yamaha C7 Grand. There's an upright in there. There's a Bosendorf upright piano. Then you've got the Rhodes Mark 1, Mark 2, and Mark 5. Then you've got the Wurlitzer A200, the original. And then you've got the Hohner D6 clavinet, which is a classic instrument. If you've ever listened to Superstition by Stevie Wonder, you have heard the Hohner D6. And then, of course, it's got a synth built in as well. Which is great. It's got some fantastic, weird and wonderful synth sounds there that are fully customizable, kind of like just like on a Moog, where you can adjust all the filters and everything else. What's the exchange rate on pounds to dollars? It's almost identical. The pound is very, very close to parity with the dollar right now. I think it's only 120 something. I think. So that would be, let me think, let me do the reverse equation. I think it's about 75p to the dollar, 75 pence to the dollar, I think. It's about, yeah, Lollipop says it's about 1.5 to 1, not in our favor. Yeah. Ken says, I use the Roland oh, sorry, VR09 for Oregon, which is decent and about a third of the price. Would still love to have a Nord. It's like a 67 Strat for keyboard players to me. Yeah, absolutely. Although I have to say, as much as I like a 67 Strat, I think I prefer like a 54 or a 54 or a 57. Those 1950s Strats and the Tellys as well. They just sound gorgeous, but yeah, they're rare and they're incredibly expensive. Jeff says Nord Stage 3 is selling for about $3,500. Yeah, that's probably about right. Yeah, and way out of my price range. But you can finance it for 36 months, no interest. Well, what are the payments on that? How much per month, Jeff? For the Stage 3? I'd love to get my hands on the Stage 4, though. And then, of course, it depends upon your credit rating. If your credit rating is good, then yeah, you can finance it. If your credit rating sucks, you're in trouble. $100 a month. Wow. Crikey. $100 a month for 36 months. That's $3,600. That's incredible. Wow. Well, if your credit rating will allow you to do it, and you can afford that finance for 36 months, bloody hell, do it. You'll not regret it. And you'll consider it an investment. Now, the problem is, as soon as you've got the keyboard home, it immediately starts to lose some value. So bear that in mind, that, you know, if when you get to the end of the 36 months of finance, and you're just like, okay, this is great, but now there's the Nord 5 or whatever comes out in the next 36 months. As soon as that comes out, your Stage 3 is going to, you know, with the Stage 4 coming out, the Stage 3 will have halved in value. So when the Stage 5 comes out, it's going to half again. So bear that in mind. That's the trouble with our business, is that, you know, the value of anything gets superseded by the next version. So, you know, it immediately depreciates quite badly. It's worse than buying a car. You know, pretty much as soon as you drive the car off the, you know, out of the showroom, it immediately loses value. You drive it 6 miles down the road and you say, hey, I'm just going to sell it to this. I don't like the car anymore. I'm going to sell it to this guy here at the side of the road. He will knock 1,000 off you, off the value of your car, in just the time it took you to go from the showroom 6 miles down the road. Yeah, it's not great. And it, you know, it's no wonder you buy a car for like £30,000, right? Or $50,000. And, you know, 3 years time, you decide, hey, I'm going to sell it. I'm going to go get something else. You're selling it at a loss. You know, it sucks. That's why I don't have a car. My wife has a car. We bought it off her stepdad for super cheap. But the thing was, it's a 2014 plate, but it had been sat in his garage for 3 years since he bought the car. And I think it had only done about 400 miles. So when we got it just last year, it had, you know, 400 miles on the clock, and it's a 2014 car. So it's going to last us quite a long time before it needs its MOT or anything else, all of its vehicle checks and stuff, which we call over here an MOT, because MOT stands for Ministry of Transport Check. So you have to have your car, when it gets to a certain amount of mileage or a certain age, has to be checked for safety and efficiency and all of that. So yeah, I hate that stuff. Mike says, gotta go, kids bedtime. Mike, good night, my friend, take care, love to your family and to your kids. Ken Moss says, tell the salesperson that you want £1,000 off the sticker price because you took it for a test drive. Yeah, I don't think the test drive counts, sadly. But yeah, that would be fun, wouldn't it, if you could do that? Okay, we are at, where are we at? We are at 7 minutes past 1 in the morning. So I have run over by 7 minutes, but that's okay. I don't mind. So we are going to wrap things up here. And I'm going to say a very big thank you to everybody for coming out tonight. I know we're a little bit low on number, but I'm sure that a lot of people are, beginning to get going with their Christmas shopping and stuff. So I'm hoping that as we get into Christmas, this show is probably going to get ever so slightly Christmassy. This one hasn't been particularly, but I think next week we will be into, what date will it be next week? It's going to be like the 10th. I think we can probably start to get slightly Christmassy then. What do you think, guys? I think we probably could. I don't see why not. Just Bob says enjoyed the show. Well, good. Yeah, 9th for you guys. 10th for me, 9th for you guys. I think we can maybe get a little bit Christmassy. So I think I might. I'm going to try and hold off on the Christmas orientated music until maybe the last show before Christmas. I might do some Christmas music at that point. But until then, folks, stay safe in the snow if you have snow in your area. If you don't, lucky you. And stores start in July. Yeah, that's about right, isn't it? Here in the UK, you get to September 1st, and they're already starting to put out the Christmas decorations in the shops, and you're just like, put them away! Put them away! It's nowhere near Christmas yet. Come on. I went into a shop today to buy a new pair of trousers for my son for his nativity, which is next week, actually. But it's dress rehearsal tomorrow, so he needed a new pair of trousers for that. So I went in and bought them, and it's just like, I walked into the shop, and it was like Wham's Last Christmas. The George Michael song, start again. Last Christmas, I gave you my heart. That one. That was on in the store, and I was just like, oh no. It really is Christmas, isn't it? When all the worst of the Christmas music comes out. And then straight after that was the, Feed the World, the Band-Aid record. You remember that? 1985. So here in the UK, we had Feed the World by the British artists. And then over in the States, I think you guys had We Are the World that Stevie Wonder wrote. I think he wrote it. Or there was like maybe 2 or 3 people involved in the writing of We Are the World. And I think Stevie Wonder was very instrumental in it. And a very close friend of mine was very much involved in the production of that We Are the World record. So anyway, Christmas. Every store that starts before December 1st of Santa's helpers. Yeah. Yeah, so I think maybe from next week I will start to get slightly Christmas orientated. I'm not going to get a lot Christmas orientated, but I'm going to get slightly Christmas orientated. But final thing to say before I do wrap up this show, don't forget December 10th, which is next Monday, is the date for releasing your song if you are taking part in the December 10th challenge. Jonny Geib and I are going to make a place on his website. I think it's going to be on his website. And we're going to make a place on the Songwriting Simplified page and the Home Studio Trainers Songwriting Support group is going to have a dedicated place. So we're going to have a few different places, guys, where you can post links to your December 10th challenge songs. So it'd just be really great if you're taking part. All you have to do is just release a song that you have written and recorded this year, preferably, to release on December 10th. So that basically a whole bunch of us just release a piece of music together at the same time, or certainly on the same day, anyway. So my song is coming along very nicely. I will have it done by the end of this week. Which will be just in the nick of time. Jonny Geib already has his done, I believe, so he's well ahead of me. So if you're taking part in it, as I say, I will do some special announcements, and next week we will be obviously talking about December 10th challenge. That's going to be the focus, and making sure that you guys get your work out there if you're taking part in that. So that's what next week's focus is going to be on, and it will be slightly Christmassy. So there we go. I'm going to end the show on that point. So if you're taking part in it, guys, keep an eye out for those announcements, and we'll make a place where you can upload your music and we can all listen to it. That would be really, really cool. Now we can critique everyone's music and help each other out, help each other improve, because that's the whole point of it, really, was to encourage everybody to actually just get a piece of music out there, and also encourage everybody to, you know, help each other develop each other's craft. So that's the focus of that. All right, folks, so we're going to end it there. Thank you, and is it good morning? It's good morning for me. It's good night for you guys. Good night, folks.